Hi, and welcome to the first episode of We Are Here Too, a podcast about mental health when living abroad. My name is Francesca. I am an Italian counsellor, currently living in Bonnie, Scotland. Why talking about mental health when living abroad? Well, let me tell you, I've lived outside of Italy now for almost 16, 17 years. I moved the first time when I was 20 and I'm 38 soon now. So yes, it's been quite some time. And I have to admit, when I first migrated, I had no sense of what was going on with my mental health. I appreciate now there are more conversations around it, but at the time I was quite oblivious, and it is only in more recent years, since I took my degree in counselling, that I realized, hey, wait a second, maybe moving country had an impact on my mental health. And that's how the journey started, and so the conversations with people in my life who migrated to around mental health and what it really means to be someone who's foreign to the land they live in. How do we know if our mental health is impacted by our life abroad or something else? There is no one easy answer to this question. I always think that whatever is supportive of someone's mental health can be very hindering for somebody else. And so, for example, me and you may be moving to a country together, and in our home country, I am experiencing some form of discrimination, you aren't. And then we move and it changes completely. It goes upside down. I don't get discriminated and you are. And so, as you can see, life abroad can have an impact on your mental health because you're experiencing a new form of discrimination, whilst most likely I am not, and is actually supporting my mental well-being because I'm not experiencing discrimination anymore, and so I'm not experiencing that level of stress that maybe I had in my home country because I was treated less favorably due to one of my protected characteristics. And the same goes for finding housing, employment, accessing services, trusting the system, feeling integrated, like socializing. There are so many variables when we move abroad that it's very difficult to pinpoint what exactly is that is affecting our mental health and what it is like a consequence of us moving abroad or not. So how do we know if our mental health is impacted at all? Well, here we are again. There is no one single answer. And I suppose that's the beauty of moving like cross-culturally and talking about mental health. It's like it really, like I suppose this topic really represents the variety of our situation. And it's very nice to think about of all the nuances that are there. And so for me, when I think about like the cues that would give me a sense of, yes, my mental health is very affected by it, I also need to think about like, hey, wait a second, maybe the way that I express issues around my mental health are not the same of someone coming from another part of the world where culturally they have different words and different ways to express issues with their mental health. And so we may not necessarily have the same code, but I suppose we can explore areas more than what words can direct us to understanding our mental health better. So one way of looking at this would be through cues to stress. So how is stress manifesting and to what degree, and how much these cues to stress differ from, our baseline of what we consider well-being. Okay, and so, for example, we would have like relational cues, and it could be anything that would basically tell us how we're doing socially and in relation to others. Or we feel like we are withdrawing more from social situations? Do we feel like we are less able to tolerate others? We can also look at existential cues, and this could be in relation to our sense of who we are in the world and what directions we are going, like if our life has sense at all, if we have thoughts around meaning of life and loss of control and direction. Other cues are the physical ones. So anything that has to do with our physical body. So any aches and pains we may experience throughout, and sometimes maybe it's just about having one ache, and sometimes it's about like your entire body shuts down. Like I know for a fact that I always have like a dodgy knee and a dodgy shoulder, and in moments when I'm feeling more stressed, like my knee and my shoulder speak volume about like the health of me overall. And those are the times when actually I really need to look inwards and say like, okay, something is causing me stress, and and that's all thanks to my body responding to it before like my brain can even compute that something is happening and is affecting my mental and emotional well-being and overall the quality of my life. Then we have emotional cues. And it's all about, whether we have more worries and anxieties than usual, whether we are feeling more irritable. And that's really connected to what we said earlier about relational cues. So are we feeling more irritable and then less able to tolerate? Are we feeling more worried and anxious, and that's why we are not participating in social gatherings, and maybe that's why we are feeling more tension? Maybe our shoulders are very achy. Maybe the anxiety is the outcome of weeks or months of feeling nothing is in our control anymore. So as you can see, like these different areas, they all come together. The last two are about cognitive cues. So, whether we have racing minds, whether we are feeling unfocused, forgetful, distracted. And then we have behavioral cues, and that's really about like what is it that we are doing that we don't necessarily do unless we are feeling stressed. And in these categories, there are so many things that fall under the umbrella of what we would consider problematic behaviors, and problematic simply because they are getting in the way of us of having like a good quality of life. And here I'm talking about maybe like increasing alcohol and substance use, video gaming, numbing our brains for hours to end in front of Netflix shows. It could really be anything, really anything. And or maybe, I don't know, excessive exercise too can fall under this category. A last question is, why do we need to talk about mental health? Well, I don't know, maybe I'm biased because I'm a counsellor. And by any means, I don't think that talking about mental health, like the act of talking, is the only way forward. I think, there are so many other non-verbal ways of dealing with mental health, such as like engaging with arts, listening to music, overall like moving your body, socializing. Those are all ways that we can that we can entertain, so that we can look after our mental health. But, talking about it and having conversation for sure has one incredibly important goal, which is, fighting alienation and the sense of like we are alone in this. And I suppose that's the very reason why I started this podcast. When I moved abroad, I was incredibly alone in my sense of like, my life sucks and I don't have anyone to talk to about this. I didn't think I could actually talk to someone about this. And I had friends, my dear friend Annalisa, she was there for me throughout. And for sure, without her, I don't think I would have necessarily stayed in Scotland, or I would reached a place where my life felt better. But, I felt like, like if only I talked to someone, to more than one person, and engage in conversation of how difficult it was to move abroad and finding your feet. And, but not only when I moved to Scotland, but since my very first move abroad, which was like, I would say like 6-7 years prior to Scotland. I think things would have been different, and I would have embraced future traveling differently. And yes, I would have felt less lonely. And so this is why I think it's important. It's important, again, to fight alienation and isolation and to connect, because we all need to connect and to feel like we are loved and cared for. And when we are in the depths of our despair and struggles with our mental health, we may reach a point where we don't think we're loved. We don't think that we're lovable. And talking to someone and sharing and hearing other people's stories of how they struggle with their mental health, but also stories of hope, how they managed to actually go to the other side. This is like incredibly powerful. And so, yes, that's why it's important. And if you're really struggling and you don't know what to do, you can always like reach out. And I am going to leave some information on the description of this episode. Well, we are at the end of our first episode of We Are Here Too. If you enjoyed it and you liked it, I think you should go and subscribe and leave a wee comment. I always appreciate that. And I would also like share it with friends and family, or whoever is going to benefit from this podcast. But also, there is another episode for you, episode number 2, already available, which is all about culture shock. So you may want to go and check that out. Thank you for listening, and I shall see you next Tuesday. Bye!